with Motorola launching two foldable phones this year, a regular and a Plus model of the Razr, also known as the Razr 40 and the 40 Ultra, you might be wondering what's the difference, and should I save money and get the cheaper model? I'm Cam Bunton from Pocket-lint, and in this comparison, I'm going to answer those exact questions. So rather than go through a section by section template for this comparison, I wanted to discuss the one area that makes the most difference to the experience of using these phones. And no surprises at all here, but it is of course the outer screen. The dual screen setup is a standard feature for most foldables, but in offering two very different solutions, Motorola has given us something to think about here. To keep costs down, the cheaper model has this small 1.5-inch display on the outside. The clock design options are cute, and you can swipe through the different panels and widgets, revealing a few useful functions. Those include things like a voice recorder, calendar events, weather, and a camera monitor for taking selfies with those main cameras. You can access your quick settings and read notifications too, but that's about it. On the plus side, the fact that those functions are limited means that you don't need to unlock your phone first in order to use them. It also means it's not likely to hog your attention too much or distract you, forcing you to actually open the phone purposefully to do anything real. The bigger cover screen on the Ultra model is a very different beast. The panels or widgets are larger, more data and graphically rich, and it can even load apps. It's a feature I didn't think I'd appreciate as much as I did, but it has been genuinely useful having this larger screen on the outside. It came into its own when replying to messages on the move and when using the camera. So when you get a message through that you want to reply to quickly, it's great having that wide keyboard on the front that you can just type on and send your reply to. It feels about as natural and easy as it would with a proper smartphone because of the width. Plus the camera monitor, combined with the ability to quickly launch the camera with a gesture, means it's super simple to launch it and then take a photo without opening the phone at all. And it's not just about selfies either. If you're taking a photo of someone else, you can get it to show them how they look, so they can pose and get ready, or you can show them an animation or a countdown. The other big thing that makes a difference is actually in the design, or more specifically, in the materials used on the phones. In all three colours of the regular model, you get a plastic-based vegan leather finish on the front and on the back. It doesn't matter if you go green, lilac or cream, it's the same finish. And there are two advantages to this. First, it feels really nice in the hand and makes it a warm and inviting texture to hold on to. It's completely different to the glass surfaces we're used to gripping on so many phones. It also means it's not likely to slide off furniture of its own accord because it's not slippery at all. And the good news is that if you want that same grippy finish, you can get it on one of the Ultra models too. The Beaver Magenta model, which in person is a weird reddish pink colour, has that same vegan leather on the back. But if you'd rather have the black or pale blue models, you get glass on the back, but again, thankfully, it's not glossy or slippery glass like Samsung uses on the Z Flip. It's a frosted matte finish, which gives the rear surface a little bit of texture. Again, it does help with slippages somewhat, adding a tiny bit of friction. Otherwise, the two are near enough identical in the design and build stakes. They have the same rounded aluminium edges, the same hinge design and bezels around the display. The Razr 40 Ultra is ever so slightly thinner than the regular version, but there's not a huge amount in it. We're talking about 0.5 millimeter at best. You also get some minor splash resistance to ensure that if your phone gets sprayed lightly with water, it shouldn't die. The opening mechanism feels identical too. Both have an ever so slightly springy feel that's a little looser than Samsung's hinge, but they'll both hold at different useful angles comfortably without wanting to snap open or shut. So how similar are the internal displays? If you've looked at the spec sheets for these two, you'll likely have seen that the main internal display features are very similar. So it's no surprise that the experience of watching content or using them is pretty much identical. Both are Full HD Plus resolution panels measuring 6.9 inches diagonally. Both are LTPO AMOLED screens capable of reaching 1400 nits peak brightness with a billion colors supported and HDR10 Plus certification. They can refresh at fast rates too, with the regular model going up to 144 Hz for gaming and the Ultra going up to 165 for gaming. That difference in absolute top refreshes isn't a major distinction and likely only comes down to the processor inside. For most content, you're going to be topping out at 120 Hz. Those are the times when you're scrolling through the user interface and the elements are animating. For video watching, it will of course be a lot less. Watching the same video on the two screens side by side, I really struggle to see any difference. The color processing, the sharpness, the brightness and contrast is pretty much identical. If there was any difference, it could be explained away by the fact that the brightness slider can't be set to the exact precise same level. So there's really nothing to separate them here. It's a similar story with software. They're both loaded with the same version of Android 13, which, because it's Motorola, is mostly clean and bloat-free. There are a couple of useful additions from Motorola, like gestures and shortcuts for launching things like the camera and the torch, plus there's those cover screen customizations. So what about the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1? Does it make a difference inside the Ultra, or is the Snapdragon 7 Gen 1 good enough? Well, in a word, yes it does, but whether you need it depends on how you see yourself using the phone. The biggest benefit to me is that because it's more battery efficient, Motorola has been able to put a smaller battery in the Ultra without significantly decreasing the battery life, and that's considering the outer screen is bigger, brighter, and uses more energy too. And that's a positive because when it's empty, it doesn't take quite as long to fill up as the 4200 mAh battery in the cheaper model. It's also made a bit of a difference in the camera department, which we'll get into later, and means that graphically intense games are better catered for. It's fast and smooth pretty much all the time, but here's the thing, so's the Snapdragon 7 Gen 1 phone. Loading apps side by side, the difference in loading speed was fractions of a second. So I don't think for most people it is going to make a huge difference. If you play Call of Duty or any particularly demanding games for longer periods, you'll definitely benefit from the more powerful chipset, but for most apps and use cases there's not a lot in it to the naked eye. Even in the camera department there isn't as big a difference as you might think there would be. I personally think it's to do with Motorola's image processing being similar on both phones, and actually I don't think it's amazing on either. But that's not to say I didn't notice any differences at all. Even in good daylight with lots of natural light to work with, I noticed that the cheaper Razr tends to boost colours a little more, making them more saturated by default and making blue skies and greenery look a little unnatural and unrealistic. When I zoom into details in the background, there's a sense that it doesn't process those details as cleanly. So on the trees on the main road in this shot, for instance, there's a weird looking oil painting vibe. Now, I'm not saying that the Ultra was perfect here, but it's certainly not quite as bad. As far as primary cameras go then, it is stronger, and thanks to the more powerful processor inside, it can also shoot higher frame rate videos with 4K up to 60 frames per second, where the regular model goes up to 30 at 4K resolution. Both can shoot HDR10 plus video though. Now otherwise there's not much to separate them. Both feature a 13 megapixel ultra-wide sensor, and when you look at the results of those cameras side by side, it's hard to see any difference at all. You can zoom digitally with the main cameras, but the lack of a dedicated optical zoom lens means once you push past that 2x zoom level, the detail and the image quality falls away. So which is best? In the end, I think from a pure usability, features and performance point of view, it's clear the 40 Ultra is the best of the two phones. That's not surprising. The outer screen makes such a difference to the experience of using a phone, giving you that convenience of being able to quickly reply to messages, emails and other tasks without needing to open the phone and use the internal screen. You can even pass time with a couple of casual games on it. Plus, it's much better for using with the main cameras on the cover. The Ultra does have slightly better cameras and a chipset inside that's faster and more efficient than the Snapdragon 7 Gen 1 inside the cheaper model, so from a pure functionality standpoint it makes more sense to get the Ultra or the Plus model if you're in the States, even if it means spending a couple of hundred more. Now that's not to say the cheaper model doesn't have any appeal, it clearly does. It's got great design that feels fantastic, and if you're not too bothered by the outer screen because you imagine you'll never use it, save money and get the softer, warmer flip phone because it's still genuinely great. If you want to see my reviews for these two phones, you can do. I've left links in the description box. If you did like this video, please do let me know on Twitter or use the comments down below which one is your favourite of these two phones. I've been Cam, I'm at Cam Bunton on Threads. If you did like this video, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe and tap the notification bell, and I'll see you again in the next one. Bye for now.